Wonderful. So it looks like we are at the hour. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just a quick disclaimer. The information presented today during the event is not intended to be medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're here for you to give you the information that you need so that you can be effective advocates. And with that, I would now like to hand it over to our President and CEO, John Boyle.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, and welcome to our IDF Forum, The Power of Plasma. To all of our return attendees, welcome back. It is always so very, very nice to see you. But then for our new participants, and I do know that we have some tonight, welcome. We are really glad that you made your way to our online home here. Well, tonight the IDF team is really excited that this forum could be brought together as it addresses a topic that comes up over and over and over in our daily lives and in the questions that you ask. Plasma. Plasma plays a critical role in our community for so many of us who are on immunoglobulin, and as recently highlighted in the news, during this pandemic, people are really getting a sense and an understanding of its life-saving properties. Now, of course, that's primarily due to the convalescent plasma, but we're really excited to be able to talk about that which came before source plasma. Now, this forum not only highlights our dedication and ensuring that you have the information and resources that you need in terms of plasma and everything else that we try to cover in these forums, but also the partnerships that IDF maintains to ensure that our community is well informed. And I'm really pleased that our colleagues from PPTA could be here with us today because the partnership that IDF has with PPTA has been incredibly meaningful and valuable through the years. We are both very deep into the world of plasma and how plasma affects people with rare diseases. And while we have somewhat different missions, the overlap that we have together, and I think the mutual respect and the ways in which our team attempt to serve everyone who really is affected by plasma, I think is something that we're really happy for you all to have a little bit more knowledge about. So we really do welcome and are happy that the PPTA team is here with us, and look forward to diving into their presentation and then a lot of questions and answers. Now, before we get to the main event, I would like to thank the sponsors who helped make this event possible. It is because of their partnerships and contributions that IDF is able to bring you programs like this and services that allow us to make sure that you are informed and that we also have a two-way stream of communication so that we're learning from one another. And of course, our sponsors includes our core service leaders, CSL Behring, Grifols, and Takeda, our core service supporter, Octapharma, our core service sustainer, Horizon Therapeutics, our core service contributors, Leadium Biosciences and ADMA Biologics, our national sustainer, Accredo, and our national patrons, Diplomat Specialty Infusion, Kedrion Biopharma, CVS Specialty, CVS Specialty Infusion Services, Koru Medical Systems, and Kaba Fusion. And as you will hear, many of our sponsors have plasma donation centers, and I would, of course, encourage you to visit their website for more information on how you can make a difference. You'll be hearing, I think, a little bit from our team at PPTA even more about that topic. One of my colleagues will be sharing links in the chat where you can find more information as we go. And so with all that said, let's get back to the show. And so I would like to hand everything back to Ashley, who will be your host for the rest of the evening's forum. Ashley?
Thank you so much, John, as always. As John alluded to, our mission at IDF is really to make sure that you are empowered by advocacy, education, and research to be an effective advocate. And so our forums are designed for you. We want you to know that you can trust us. We are here for you. We use innovation and technology to ensure that you have the tools that you need, and want to make sure that you know that we have our compassion during these times. So with that, we are excited to get started with our forum. At this time, I would now like to hand it over to Ellen from CSL Behring, who will give us a quick word from our sponsors. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, how are you? Can everybody hear me okay?
Good.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. My name is Ellen with CSL Behring, and I work in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, as an area manager. I'm so happy that I've been able to join several of these IDF events over the last 6 months, and just want to thank the IDF for doing such an excellent job with organizing wonderful speakers and topics, and also for their strong efforts to pivot to the virtual environment we are in to ensure that everyone can still make connections safely. I passionately support patients, and I'm so pleased to be here to support everyone in any way possible in this virtual format until we can meet again safely in person. I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to meeting everyone later on and answering your questions in the breakout room. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Always a pleasure seeing you here. Next, I would like to invite Kurt Himes from Grifols for a quick word from our sponsor. Hi, Kurt.
Well, hey there. Thanks for having me. I'd really appreciate it. And gosh, I've been coming to IDF meetings, I guess, for the past 9 years. And they're my favorite meetings to go to. I just find that there's so much going on and so much that patients get out of it, what I get out of it and helping. So thanks for having me. But, you know, a little bit about Grifols. Grifols is a global company that has been enhancing the health and well-being of patients since 1909. So our products, Gamunex C and Zembify, help ensure the health and safety of our patients and increase their well-being and quality of life. And so it's for this reason that, you know, safety is a philosophy that goes hand in hand with our commitment to integrity in everything that we do. Just as you were mentioning before, our patient focus is based on, excuse me, 4 main pillars: education, advocacy, engagement, and support. And so Grifols is a strong supporter of the patient communities that we serve and organizations like the IDF. And we're just super proud to be a sponsor again here today, and look forward to the patient chat rooms and some of the speed talk we get into to make sure we fit it all in. So looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing you during the virtual exhibit hall. And now for the moment we've been waiting for, I would like to hand it over to Amy Efantis, President and CEO of PPTA, and Julie Birkofer, the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs. We're really excited to have you both here, so thank you so much. And if you could please just introduce yourself, share a little bit with our audience. We're sure that they are excited to hear from you, so thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ashley. I'm Amy Efantis. I'm the President and CEO at PPTA, and I'm joined tonight by our Senior VP of Public Affairs, Julie Birkofer. Julie, why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Amy. I too have had the pleasure of working with the Immune Deficiency Foundation and your community for many years. I can tell you, y'all are a powerhouse. You've got power at IDF, right? We've seen it. And when I kind of look through the pictures at the bottom of the screen, I see so many familiar faces. I'd have to say, IDF, you probably got the best advocates out there. So thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I concur. I've been with PPTA for only going on 2 years, and I've worked in biopharma for decades, but I really haven't met a more passionate patient community that I've met working in this field. And IDF, as Julie said, is a powerhouse. I think, you know, John Boyle to me represents, he's a force. And as an advocate, he represents this organization beautifully. I think he's been a good partner. But more than that, he can be very tough. He's very honest with us, and he holds us accountable. And I have a lot of respect for him for that. So I think what better way to kick off a discussion on the power of plasma, if you could go to the next slide, please, than by this video from our How Is Your Day campaign that John recorded.
Education is critical when it comes to those of us who receive plasma protein therapies. Many people are familiar, for example, with hemophilia, and they may have heard of something like factor VIII or factor IX. But most people don't necessarily know about primary immunodeficiency diseases and the immunoglobulins that we receive, or the alpha-1 community and the plasma protein therapies that they receive. So it's critical for them to understand what all of these different therapies do, how they are life-changing or life-saving, but also that they come from the same source, as it were, plasma. A message like, how was your day? It's a good question to ask, but it's also a conversation starter, is an entry point into what some people might see as a somewhat daunting and complicated area that they probably never dealt with before. But, using that sort of question as an entry point to discuss and to make people aware of the realities of those of us who live with a rare and chronic condition and who benefit from a plasma protein therapy, it's just a great way to start. If I only had a minute to talk to a policy member, I would make sure that they understood the impact that plasma protein therapies play on patients like me. These are not therapies that provide a small measure of comfort or a little bit of increased ability, that these are life-saving and that they are life-changing, and that by focusing on them, making sure that there is access to them, that they are safe, that they are efficacious, that as many people as can use them are able to, that people like me become less of a drain on the system, because when we are on these therapies, we do well. We're productive members of society. We're able to be a part of the communities that we want to be a part of. Policymakers have to consider we are different. Our therapies are different. Our needs are different. These are so highly regulated, but also so highly effective. And I think that it's really critical for policymakers, decision makers, and the world at large to understand just what goes into these truly miraculous therapies. It's complicated, it's complex, but it's worth it.
So I and who could have said it better than John Boyle? I think it's really, that's an excellent video, and I love the essence of what he captured there. I will say, as a caveat, our presentation is chocked full of videos, so my apologies to the IDF staff who's been tortured by our presentation. Hopefully they will all go smoothly. So tonight we're going to talk about the significance of donation, the process of collecting plasma, and then important updates for the community. So who is PPTA? We're a trade association, but we're also a standard setting organization. We represent the private sector producers of plasma-based and recombinant therapies. Our members provide more than 80% of the world's source plasma and the majority of the world's safe and effective plasma protein therapies. We engage in, as I said, standard setting, pathogen safety issues, and advocacy. So we're going to talk about what our mission is, the safety of plasma protein therapies, other diseases besides primary immune deficiency, which you're familiar with, but others that are treated by plasma protein therapies, what our advocacy looks like, and then we'll talk a little bit about the urgent current need for normal or source plasma. Our mission is fairly simple and elegant. It is to promote the availability of and access to safe and effective plasma protein therapies for patients around the world. This has been PPTA's mission for a couple of decades. It's probably also important to share our central pillar of our strategy, which is to be a trusted stakeholder. This sort of breaks down what that mission statement means, and I won't go through all of this, but really from the beginning, from when a plasma is collected all the way through to a finished therapy, PPTA is involved in those processes, and all of that is governed by a code of ethics. So this shows you these are our global members. We have other levels of membership, and I think when I saw at the beginning your sponsors, I think all of those players touch PPTA, but this is a list of our global companies, and these are household names for the people on this call. So Grifols, CSL, Behring, Takeda, Kedrion, BPL, and Biotest are companies you all know. And I think when because it's a small board of directors, we know them well. They're 6 people, and we know their passion and how committed they are. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they came together, I think, beautifully, working together, many of them as companies. This is a highly competitive environment, and they put all that aside and came together in cooperation with one another, and some in cooperation with governments or other partners, but all of them are involved in projects to address the health of COVID patients as well. So we'd like to share a video with you of our global board members and their message on this.
Patient lives are at the core of our industry's work every day around the world.
From the very start of the COVID-19 pandemic, we took immediate action as a global industry.
We came together and our teams are working day and night on COVID-19 treatments.
We know that plasma-derived therapies save and improve the lives of people with rare diseases.
And we are using our collective expertise and knowledge to identify treatments that can help people with COVID-19 now and in the future.
We are grateful to our plasma donors and center staff because we know plasma saves lives.
Lives impacted by serious, chronic, and inherited diseases, as well as those affected by COVID-19.
Whether you're a longtime plasma donor or you've recently recovered from COVID-19, you are saving lives every time you donate. Thank you.
Thank you to all plasma donors and all of our donation center employees.
We are grateful for your commitment.
Together we are stronger.
So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Julie to talk about our stakeholder partners.
Thanks, Amy. I mean, that's what this evening's all about, right? Sharing information, empowering each other, sharing knowledge, and our supporting organizations, the patient groups. You are our key stakeholders. And you can see in the United States and in Europe, the various groups we work with in the community of plasma protein users. And right there in the center, you can see the IDF. So I can't say enough about the leadership and the advocacy and the strength and the power of the IDF advocates. I just wanted to spend a second on this. I mean, y'all are patients. You know you have a disease, a rare disease. But if we look at this in the context of health policy, rare disease groups are small. And when you're real small, you got to be mighty. And you have to have your voice and you have to be engaged. And y'all are so fortunate that you have the IDF to help lift you up and give you that strength. So if you take a look at the traditional definition in the United States of an orphan disease, it's about 200,000 people or less. And then if you look at the bar chart there and you see all of the various disease states that are treated with plasma protein therapies, it's less than 100,000 people in the United States on therapy. So this is a very unique, a very special population, almost an ultra rare disease. So in order to have your heard, and in order for you to be heard with policymakers, whether it's in Capitol Hill, in Washington, D.C., or in your state capitals, your voice is so important because we may be small, but we're mighty. And so that's kind of the message I wanted y'all to take away from this slide. We have a lot of information on our website. You may have noticed at the end of that global board video, it talked about a special resource page, COVID-19 resources on our website. We have a variety of infographics, but right from the beginning of this pandemic back in March, we realized there was tremendous confusion between COVID convalescent plasma and source plasma that is further manufactured to treat rare disease patients. And we really wanted to draw in a visually easy to understand way what those distinctions are. And we wanted to explain to people, you know, you probably saw on our global board video, we have folks from other countries on our global board of directors. They're global. And when you work in a global environment, plasma in the US is only used for manufacture of finished product for US patients. But that plasma could be manufactured elsewhere in Europe. And so these infographics, and there's a lot of these on our website, we're trying to find ways that we can explain how complex this industry is, and we hope you find these relatable and useful. So now let's get into some of the fun stuff, plasma donations and their significance. I think it'd be good here again to listen to a video. Terry is someone I've known for years. He is an advocate in your community. He is a powerhouse. So let's hear from Terry.
It changed my entire life. I was very sick for my first 33 years of life. All kinds of illness, bronchitis, pneumonia, conjunctivitis, eye infections, ear infections. What I'm missing, my body makes no antibodies, and the gamma globulin is the pooled human antibody of thousands of donors. It would be similar to a diabetic who makes no insulin. When I got treated, it was a world that I hadn't imagined. People would ask me, well, did you always dream of being a group exercise instructor? And I said, no. I was so sick that was not in the realm of my imagination. I don't actually have to go anywhere. Right in the home here, where I'm talking to you from today, my nurse comes once every 28 days. It's a very easy process for me. It's one day a month. The rest of the time, I forget that I have an illness. This medicine for me changed my life, and it made me have a life more normal, like the average normal person. So to say 5 or 6 things that I couldn't have done without this medication is very limiting, because I just wouldn't have a life. I would not be alive. One of my biggest fears is that somehow I would lose access to this medication, and I would be forced to go back into that downward spiral towards death that I was in right before diagnosis. There's not enough gratitude I can express in the world for how much myself and other patients like myself owe to the blood plasma donors. So to you plasma donors, thank you.
It's so powerful. So, you know, as Terry is thinking about plasma donors and thanking them, that's also top of mind for the association. And we are very proud of plasma donors, and our companies are committed that they be healthy, that we treat them in a dignified manner. And I wanted to share this slide with you this evening because this gentleman is a Nobel Prize laureate, and he has come out strong in support of plasma donors and the need for donations. And I think this idea that being grateful and expressing gratitude, and IDF has done a fantastic job through the years of making those connections between the donor and the patient. It really is a symbiotic relationship. And I know, John, you and many of your staff, you all were the pioneers of, I think it was Genes for Genes. And you went into plasma donation centers and you were able to make those connections. And it's just tremendous when you do that, when you experience it. I'd encourage everyone to reach out and to visit your local donation centers and make those connections. It's so enriching. So here's some good news. Our industry, the plasma donation centers, annually we're able to collect the data of how many collections have there been in the United States. And you can see here such a nice steady increase. And at the end of 2019, we had more plasma donations than ever before. And this is so important. This also is great news for patients that we had this upward trajectory. I'm going to let Amy talk to you about where we are now and what the impacts of the pandemic is. Might not be a smart move for me to give my boss the tough stuff to deliver, but at the end of 2019, you can see the growth. And this growth also reflects the commitment of the sector and the financial investment that's required. If you think that each plasma donation center takes 3 to 5 years to build out and license so that you're in regulatory compliance, that you can begin to collect, and could cost anywhere from $5 to $7 million. And we have right now, over 860 centers across the United States. This industry, this sector, they're committed. They have been in this business for many years. We have a lot of experts. You have many folks on the phone with you tonight from our membership. And, I just thought it would be nice for you to see that this industry is committed and they are investing. Again, the infographics, lots of questions, how can I donate? How many times a week can I donate? What happens to my donation? All of these answers can be found on our website. We hope you'll visit it. And we try to be a information clearinghouse. And when you're looking at these things, if you have ideas or suggestions, I welcome feedback. But I just hope that you can use these materials, download them, share them with people. Think of what you can do in your own community with this information. I think you all know this, but just a little perspective, share with you what we think we know. Immune globulins come from plasma. There is no other option. Plasma is rich in antibodies. They help replace deficient or damaged immunoglobulins. And, we are committed to this space in this sector. And right now in the United States, our estimates are there are approximately 45,000 patients on treatment. There may be more folks out there and the potential that need to be diagnosed and need to get on therapy. But right now, immune globulins are really essential and life-saving, and hopefully make a positive difference to all of you that are either patients or have family members that are taking your time to be with us this evening. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Amy.
Thank you, Julie. Julie gave me the task of talking about the plasma collection process because I was for many years a plasma donor myself. I've been back recently, although my role now is more of the plasma evangelist. I encourage as many of my family, friends, neighbors to donate plasma as I can, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But if you'll go to the next slide, the best way to describe the plasma collection process, which is different than a blood donation, we have this really nice little video that sort of captures it really well.
Many patients with rare and genetic disorders are relying on you. That's because blood contains plasma, a key ingredient in the treatments they need to survive. And the only way to get source plasma is from healthy donors. Plasma is the protein-rich, gold-colored liquid portion of blood that remains after red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and other cellular components are removed. It all starts when a donor visits one of the more than 700 source plasma donation centers in North America and Europe. First, the donor will check in at reception, presenting a government-issued ID with proof of current address. The donor then takes a few minutes to complete a health history questionnaire. Then, they must pass a health screening prior to each donation before being able to donate. Source plasma donors in the United States and some European countries are given a modest compensation for their time and travel. Plasma, which is used to make life-saving plasma protein therapies, is collected through a process known as plasmapheresis. During this process, an automated device is used to separate the plasma from the blood. Once the plasma is collected, red blood cells and other components are returned to the donor. After the plasma is collected, it is tested for suitability for further manufacture, frozen, and then held for 60 days prior to pooling. It must pass these rigorous steps to be pooled with other plasma donations. Each plasma pool is further tested before the protein extraction process begins. During this process, life-saving proteins are extracted from the plasma. The separated specific proteins are purified and adjusted for optimal dosage before becoming the finished therapeutic product. Each source plasma donation is tracked the entire time, from the donation all the way to the final therapy. It is essential that healthy people donate plasma because every year it takes approximately 130 plasma donations to treat one person with a primary immune deficiency, 900 donations to treat one person with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, and 1,200 donations to treat one person with hemophilia. Plasma donation is a process that saves lives, and it all starts with you. Thank you, plasma donors. To learn more and to find the nearest source plasma donation center, please visit www.donatingplasma.org. And to learn how source plasma makes a difference by saving and improving the lives of people with rare, genetic, and chronic diseases, please visit www.howisyourday.org.
Thank you for playing that. And I love that video because I think it so beautifully and concisely describes the process of not just donating plasma, but sort of the exquisitely regulated process of how then it is developed into a finished therapy. So this slide, you know, this is a cool slide because I think we refer to plasma as liquid gold. And again, it's chocked full of proteins. It's made up of hundreds of proteins. And as those of you on this call understand well, some people are born without certain proteins. For a PID patient, those are antibodies. And these products are, the plasma is fractionated. So that's what the process is called, which means they're pulled out, those individual proteins. And this is a list of some of those proteins that are then used to address other diseases as well. I think what's really important here is that whole process that was just described to you, from the point of collection all the way through to finished therapy that arrives to a patient or from vein to vein, that can take anywhere from 7 to 12 months. So this is not something that can be turned around quickly. It's highly regulated, and those regulations exist to ensure the quality and safety of that finished product. So it's very important to understand sort of the protracted nature of the manufacturing of these products. And this sort of reiterates what you heard in the video, but I think this is important because for a primary immune deficient patient on a plasma protein therapy, that therapy requires 130 donations a year. For someone who has hemophilia and uses a plasma protein therapy, it's 1,200 donations a year. These are very resource intense therapies. And I think it's in my decades of working in biopharma, and I've worked in for a lot of different companies, this one is the most resource intense. If you look at pill and tablet manufacture, right? So pills that are manufactured for, say, high blood pressure, and you have problems getting a chemical. You can source that chemical from somewhere else. Even with biologics, you can acquire cell lines. For plasma protein therapies, they rely on individual donations. Donors one at a time, sitting in a chair, committing their time to having a needle put in their arm and donating plasma for someone else. So these are very different. And so what's important for the community, or what do we really want to impart to you? At the beginning of the pandemic, we PPTA worked really closely with the Department of Homeland Security and European authorities as well to make sure that plasma centers, plasma donors, and plasma center employees were all deemed essential. And that happened actually rather quickly. But in spite of that, donors had a lot of trepidation. I think everyone did at the beginning of the pandemic. And we published this note to plasma donors assuring them of the safety. But what we've seen, and this is publicly available data now, if you think back to the slide that Julie shared with you, the bar graph that showed that really steady and beautiful growth in plasma collections in the US, 2018 being a record-setting year, which was beat by 2019. Even in those years, and I think folks on this call will relate to this, even in 2019 where we had record collections, there were patients who had challenges to accessing therapies. So if you think about that, and then you think about what we know, what's been published in the press. So these are two of our biggest plasma collectors in the United States that make up more than half of the centers. And here they quantify or characterize the declines that they're witnessing. And then we understand that 7 to 12 month process to manufacture a product. We know that right now is the time for plasma. We need plasma collected right now. And this is, again, this is our mission at PPTA. This is something I feel very passionate about, as does our staff. And this continues to be our focus. So what have we done? I think as an industry, we've industry-wide efforts to address this. Early on, we joined in coalition with other stakeholders, and our companies certainly have, I think, shown a sincere commitment to not just the collection of COVID plasma, but source plasma as the core of their business. So when you have, when you're a small player, but you have a big message, social media is a great way to share that. And we've certainly exercised our social media channels. And I'll revisit this when I talk about our call to action. But we had, prior to the pandemic, we didn't have really a social media presence in Europe. We've changed that, and we've really amplified what we're doing in the US as well. This is some of the images that you can see on our Facebook account. And I think these are vibrant, beautiful images. We're particularly proud of the one on top in the middle, which was developed by one of our artists in residence, one of our own staff members. But these are really important messages that we continue to share through all of our social media channels. So from the beginning of the pandemic, our companies, as I said, came together quickly, putting aside sort of their own selfish interests, and really showed a community effort to address COVID. And some of them formed a formal alliance with one another that's working in development. Others have engaged with government partners, and others with other stakeholders, but all of them are involved in projects in some way to address COVID. They've also joined into alliances with partners like Microsoft and Google to really amplify messages about the importance for convalescent plasma. So I think the next slide, I believe, has so you've heard of The Fight Is In Us. This is that sort of coalition voice, and a number of celebrities have participated in these ads to talk about the need for convalescent plasma. So the first, this video is from Dwayne Johnson, and I think is very resonant. So if you could please play this.
We're going through a really tough time right now all around the world, and COVID-19 is still impacting so many people. If you survived it, then you're the heroes we need. The plasma that's in your blood can literally save lives, but we have to act fast. So please donate. You fought for your life. Now, let's work together to take down COVID-19. To donate plasma, go to thefightisinuS.org.
I think that's a great message. I mean, and who doesn't listen to The Rock? right? Ironically, I think I've read that Dwayne Johnson and his family recently tested positive for COVID. I'm sure he will continue to be a committed spokesperson. We know that other prominent figures, Tom Hanks, Sophia Trudeau, who's married to the Prime Minister in Canada, and our favorite opera singer, Andrea Bocelli, all have come up publicly in support of this. So what is our call to action? First of all, contact policymakers about the urgent need for donations. Obviously, PPTA, this is part of our wheelhouse. This is what we do. So we're actively engaging with federal, state, local policymakers to trumpet this message, but we really need help with making sure that that's reaching the right folks. And again, while convalescent plasma is really important, source plasma there's a perpetual need for this. Speak out about outdated regulations. And this is really critical because if I were to show you a map of where plasma centers are in the United States, you'd see that there is a disproportionate burden that's borne in the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt. There are regions like the state of California and the state of New York have very few plasma centers because of some outdated regulations in those states. And so we urge you to reach out to lawmakers to clear the way for increased plasma collection so that we can meet patient clinical need. And use your own social media channels. I'm fortunate enough to live within a couple miles of a plasma center, so I can actually drive my neighbors. I've done that if they are inclined to go. But if you don't, donatingplasma.org will show you where they are, and you can use social media just to make sure we're sharing this message. And finally, if you are an eligible healthy adult, please donate plasma. Patients are counting on you, and the time is now. So, as we talk to our staff about how to thank plasma donors and show our gratitude, we put together this video. And then I'd like to share a little thought after this about how you can do the same.
Every donation helps people with rare diseases enjoy another day with their loved ones. Thank you, plasma donors.
You make a difference.
When you give, people live. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Obrigada, doadores de plasmas.
Danke.
Thank you, plasma donors, for saving and improving the lives of patients every day with your generous donations. You're heroes.
Your donation can save lives.
Thank you, plasma donors. Efantis.
Plasma donors are lifesavers. Thank you.
Gracias.
We are so grateful for you.
Plasma donors save lives.
You're rock stars.
Merci aux donneurs de plasma. Vous avez été super. Vous sauvez des vies.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Your donation matters.
Merci beaucoup.
Vielen Dank an alle Plasmaspender.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Plasma donors save lives.
Большое спасибо всем донорам плазмы.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Ustedes son salvavidas.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Virginia is for lovers.
And we love plasma donors.
Thank you, plasma donors.
Thanks for showing that. And I think you can see, first of all, we got the Blue Angels enlisted to help us with that. I think everyone should be pretty impressed by that. But mostly our staff was so enthusiastic about being involved in that. You can see our staff is global and they got their families involved. So we had a lot of fun doing that. But the howsyourday.org, we want to hear from you. We want your stories because it means a lot more coming from patients, from sort of firsthand testimonials, and also thanking donors. Making that connection is really, really important. So again, donatingplasma.org and howsyourday.org for sharing stories. And really just thank you, John, and to IDF for allowing us to be part of this tonight. And thanks to your whole audience for welcoming us. We appreciate the partnership.
Thank you so much, Amy and Julie, for that wonderful presentation. I know that a lot of us at IDF who saw the last video with a thank you, it definitely made our day, and we really appreciate the information that you shared with us. For those of you who have questions for our presenters, please submit your questions via the chat to IDF Forums. These questions will be answered during the live Q&A. But before we get to that Q&A, I would like to invite Natalie from Koru Medical Systems for a quick word from our sponsors. Hi, Natalie.
Hey, thank you so much for having us tonight. I enjoy being part of these IDF virtual events. It's a great way to bring us all together and to provide some awesome education. I really enjoyed the presentation. At Koru Medical Systems, we manufacture life-saving medical devices for patients to infuse subcutaneous immune globulin. And we are completely on board with the campaign for healthy donors to donate plasma, and our company is fully supporting the effort, giving our employees that actually make our products in our New York plant time off to go and donate plasma. And I think it's a great, a great effort and campaign by all of the manufacturing partners and by IDF. And we really appreciate, everything that you do. So we're excited to be here and excited to meet you all in the virtual exhibit hall. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Always great seeing you. Next, I would like to invite Eric Pluckhorn from Octapharma for a quick word. Hi, Eric.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'm Eric Pluckhorn from Octapharma. I'm joined tonight by Joanna Maltese, who's one of our clinical nurse educators. And we're happy to be here with everybody, and I love listening to that presentation, and hope you all can join us a little bit later on in the breakout rooms where we talk about some of the support programs we have for our sub-Q IG product. So thanks again for having us, and thanks for a wonderful meeting. See you all soon.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, so next we are going to go into our Q&A session. So just a quick note, while Julie and Amy are here to answer a lot of their questions, we did want you to know that they are not medical professionals, but they are really excited to answer as many of your questions as they can. They have a great team who works with them, so they have a plethora of knowledge, and I know that they're excited. One of the first questions that I wanted to start off with that came from our audience: what are some of the safety guards that have been implemented in plasma collection centers to avoid donations from individuals with COVID-19?
It's a really good question. So early on in the pandemic, our staff developed a checklist that was shared with our companies, but all of our companies have developed protocols that at least meet that checklist and some beyond that. So, some of them include things like having your temperature checked when you walk in the door, distancing. So social distancing between donation chairs in the waiting room. Some have eliminated waiting rooms altogether and have donors waiting outside. I guess that's in places where the weather would allow for that, right? And they've taken a number of measures with personal protective gear for donors and employees. masks, gloves, etc., the way they're taking care of the donor areas after each donation. So there's a number of measures that have been taken to make donors feel more comfortable, and a lot of our members have, because they've had to create social distance between the chairs. The first question that people often ask is, well, then you're not able to collect as much plasma. That should be a concern. So a lot of them have adjusted their hours and the number of days they're open to accommodate that, and I think have gone way beyond to really make sure that donors feel safe and that plasma center employees are safe.
Thank you. Can you discuss who is the ideal candidate for plasma donations? Is there an age limit, an upper age limit? Maybe they can't be a certain age to donate anymore.
So it varies from center to center. The minimum age is 18. There may be exceptions to that, but I believe it's you have to be a legal adult. There's a minimum weight requirement of 110 pounds. I fortunately qualify. The upper limit, I think, varies by company. The policies differ. Apart from that, it's healthy adults who can, who meet the screening criteria, and who there is a pretty rigorous screening process that a donor goes through, particularly on your first donation, but then each subsequent time as well, to ensure the safety of the plasma that's collected.
Okay. Are plasma centers currently seeing a decrease in donations, and why is that, if they are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, and it really is regional, but the broad answer is yes. So compared to 2019, we definitely, as I said, and this is, I should have mentioned this caveat that as a trade association, we are governed by by competition law. And so we're not allowed to say anything sort of prospective, nor do we have that, are we privy to that kind of data. However, as I said, we do know that when we look historically at where collections have been and where they are today, that yes, there have been declines, and that's because in spite of the measures that have been taken, in spite of donors being deemed essential, people are afraid because of the pandemic. As I said, that there is a recovery happening, and I think broadly speaking, that's really good news. It's just we're not where we were in 2019, and so there is an urgency now, and that's why we're really asking everyone's help to get this message out.
Wonderful. And so we did kind of have a follow-up question to that because of that decrease. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what else PPTA is doing to increase the number of frequency of plasma donations, and how we as a community can bring more awareness? Mm-hmm. I know we discussed that, but do you have a little bit more to add to that?
Sure. So again, we represent the companies that actually collect plasma, so we're not collectors ourselves, but our companies are certainly, our companies are investing a lot of resources in attracting donors right now. PPTA is also, we have a very big undertaking underway to raise awareness about donation and make sure we're getting to the right audiences, but also, I mean, a big part of our job is advocacy and working with policymakers and making sure they understand this, because of course they have a giant pulpit, right? And we really want to get to them to make sure that we're leveraging everything we can. And again, it's our social media channels. It's sharing this with your neighbors, making sure people are aware of it. A lot of people, plasma is on their tongues for the first time, which we're thrilled about because of COVID, and they understand convalescent plasma, but getting them to the next step, which is, it's great. We want medicines to treat COVID patients, but people living with rare chronic diseases, there's a perpetual need for plasma for them. And that's really as important.
Thank you, Amy. Can people donate blood and plasma at the same time?
So the collection of blood and plasma is a little different, although if you're a blood donor, plasma can be what's called recovered from a blood donation. So if you donate blood, that plasma might be recovered and used. However, there's a lot less of it that can be used. And as a plasma donor, because in that donation process, as you saw, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets, and other cellular components are returned to you, so you can give more frequently. That's not to say, that it's more important. It's just that, as you saw, the need for the raw material that plasma is for for plasma protein therapies is so intense.
How many plasma centers in the U.S. are there, and is there a need for us to advocate for more plasma centers to open?
So I think there's over 850 plasma centers in the United States. That's, by the way, most of the plasma centers in the world are in the U.S., and there's still not enough. So the answer to the second question is yes. Definitely, and as I said, there are states where there are obstacles to this. California, I mentioned California, New York. There are no plasma centers in the state of Massachusetts. Ironically, Massachusetts was particularly hard hit by COVID, and so when you think about what was needed to treat COVID patients, and there was no collection, there's a certain degree of irony there. But again, this perpetual need is so important, and making sure that we meet patient clinical need means that we need to collect more plasma.
Thank you. Do you know, is immunoglobulin manufactured in a different country? Where does most plasma tend to originate from?
So actually that's two separate questions, and it's a really good one. In the United States, the regulations in the United States for therapies that are used for US patients say that the plasma in those therapies must come from US donors. However, as Julie pointed out, I think the infographic she shared that showed that world map, the plasma might leave the US to be manufactured in another country and then come back. And of course, some US plasma goes to Europe for therapies there because those regulations are different. So it's all US therapies are made with US plasma, but they might not, some are manufactured in the US and some are manufactured elsewhere.
So another question from our audience. Both of my parents donated plasma and they're donating next week, I'm sorry. How long does it take for their plasma to become product?
So first of all, thank you to your parents and bless them. So from the time you donate until that becomes a finished therapy, it's really a range, but it can be 7 to 12 months before that becomes an actual therapy that goes to a patient.
And are you able to designate who that plasma, that product goes to?
That's another good question that we often hear. And the answer to that is no, because the manufacturing process, of course, as I said, is very involved and is highly regulated. But that plasma, as you saw in the video, it's not like one donation for one product. It actually, that plasma becomes pooled and then it goes through this very, exquisitely regulated process of making sure that it's treated for every possible pathogen, that it's virally inactivated. So that process is very lengthy, and that's a long answer to say no, because that donation may treat many people.
One of the slides, it said it takes 130 plasma donations to treat one PI patient. How many grams of IG does this correspond to?
Oof, I don't know the answer to that. Julie might.
Yeah, those are rough calculations, kind of meant to be illustrative. When we did that, we were estimating an industry average 4 grams yield per liter of plasma. you know, do some companies have greater efficiencies and can get more grams of IG per liter? Probably, perhaps, but we don't know that. So we, as I said, it's an average of 4 grams per liter, and it was an average, I think, 75 grams per kilogram type average dosing. They're rough calculations meant to be illustrative. I certainly wouldn't think that those are, you know, tried and true things that we could get published, but it was just meant to give you a sense. I hope that's helpful.
It is. Thank you. Another question that we have: do all collection centers collect both convalescent and source plasma?
So no, they don't. A lot of this is an important distinction, I think. I have to start by talking about convalescent plasma first, because as I said, all of our global companies are involved in these kinds of projects, and a lot of our regional companies are as well. So convalescent plasma, or plasma that's taken from a patient who's recovered from COVID, is used in 2 different ways for these purposes. The blood centers are collecting COVID plasma from COVID recovered patients, that convalescent plasma, for purposes of transfusing it directly into a patient who is currently sick with COVID-19. But they have a different licensing structure and a different collection structure than plasma collectors. Our companies, as I said, are also collecting that convalescent plasma, but it's being used for use in further manufacturing of what could potentially become a hyperimmune. And I say potentially because they're in development. None of them have been approved yet. Apart from that, of course, there's source plasma collection. And all of our companies, of course, are source plasma collectors, but not all of them are collecting for convalescent plasma.
Thank you. Do you know, will plasma centers be able to differentiate those who donate for plasma therapeutics, versus those who are donating for COVID?
So when COVID plasma donors are generally, you know, some people, of course, go voluntarily. And when they do, yes, there is a screening at those centers. And even if you're a source plasma donor, this is why it's really important. I always tell people, call the center before you go. And they'll tell you what their regulations are. Some require appointments, what their expectations are. So, you know, if you call ahead, you'll know. And yes, they do know. They ask that question.
Can you discuss a little bit of the reasoning why there are not plasma centers in certain states when they have great medical experts in those states?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great question. I'm going to actually ask Julie to talk about, because I think I've said ad nauseum about what I think in terms of states that have outdated regulations, but I'll let Julie speak a little bit about this because she has some very deep expertise in state government affairs.
Oh, thank you. So the question is, why are plasma centers not in certain states? And it's exactly that. The regulatory environment is antiquated or burdensome. It's things that were in place in the late 70s or early 1980s. You know, regulators are slow to move and to change. And we've been working very closely with support from the Immune Deficiency Foundation and other patient groups to raise that awareness in New York and in California and in Massachusetts. And, you know, there are probably other states and regions and places where we can do more. There's also, believe it or not, you know, lots of local regulations. You know, when you get from the federal level to the state level, then you have the local level. I mean, in some communities, there are restrictions with zoning and building and, you know, where you can have a center. And when companies for areas that are vibrant, they look for areas that have a good demographic or hopefully a group of people that they can draw from to donate. College towns are fantastic. Military bases But sometimes you run up against restrictions and local laws and regulatory, and that's what we're trying to do, is break down these barriers. And IDF has partnered with our staff to do that, and we're grateful. I hope that's responsive. If not, keep pushing back.
Thank you, Julie. Another question. What does PPTA do to reduce the stigma around being a plasma donor? For example, there might be people who think that it's a scary place going to these plasma centers. Maybe it's not safe. Can you highlight a little bit of what PPTA does to get rid of that stigma or to help fight?
So I think a lot of, if you look on our website, a lot of what we, a lot of our efforts are focused on sort of demystifying the process. You saw our video, which explains, I think, in a really accessible way what that process is like, which is, you know, for someone who's ever donated blood, it's really not appreciably different, except that the timing is different. But also, our global companies right now are looking at undertaking an effort as we think about how to really amplify messaging on getting donors right now, also on looking at non-traditional donors and on addressing exactly this issue about stigma, et cetera, and making people aware. I mean, I've felt strongly about this issue my whole life since I was in college and first was a plasma donor. This is something I've felt passionately about. And it's, you know, when I explain to people that it's not a frightening process at all, and you get people to actually go, they're always surprised that it's, and that helps remove the stigma. But I think a lot of our efforts right now are really focused on that exact issue. And of course, you know, spreading the word is on the need is really important because people want to be helpful. And this is a really wonderful way to be helpful right now.
Thank you, Amy. Another very important question. I think we did touch upon this a little bit, or you did. Is there an update on how plasma companies are working together during the COVID-19 pandemic to avoid a potential plasma shortage?
That's a complicated question for this reason. Of course, what we do is highly regulated by competition law. And so there's limits on what companies, how they can't coordinate, right? However, because of what I've shared with you earlier, of course, there are, all of our companies are doing everything I think at their disposal to get plasma donations now. And I think it's fair to say that although we would like to have more message amplification especially at the federal government level, there are regulators who understand this space. And, you know, I know that John is acquainted with people at FDA who are really sensitive. We have data that we collect on finished product. PPTA does. Well, we have a third party that collects it. We actually don't see it for 3 months. There's a delay on it, but we watch that data. FDA gets it in real time. And so they're watchful of that. And then of course they have their own ways of measuring that too. So that's a long answer to say, I think all of our companies are vigilant right now. This is an issue everyone's paying attention to.
Thank you so much. And I think that we have time for maybe one more question. How would if a plasma donor is asymptomatic with COVID, is there a back end process to eliminate the risk of COVID being in the plasma?
That's an excellent question. And if I wish I could give you the beautiful scientific definition that's available on our website, but very early on in the pandemic, our pathogen safety experts from all of our member companies came together and produced a statement to assure patients, the end users, that these products are safe and the processes that are used in manufacturing of plasma protein therapies clear these kind of viruses. So they are safe even if someone is asymptomatic and has COVID. But I think as we look at the pandemic and how far we've come, we're getting better and better at sort of detecting that, even as individuals who aren't medical professionals.
And Ashley, I'm going to do something highly unusual here. And if I could actually jump in a little bit on this particular question, the pathogen inactivation, of course, would neutralize COVID and any other pathogen that's out there. But I just did want folks to think a little bit about, we actually want people who frankly may be asymptomatic with COVID or having recently had COVID, because they will then have anti-COVID antibodies that will end up being pooled and will 7 to 12 months later be provided to us. Now, the jury is still out as to how effective those antibodies will be and, you know, the level of protection, but that is at the core of immunoglobulin and antibody replacement therapy. So, you know, the bad of the active virus, you know, will be knocked out, but theoretically, the good of the anti-COVID antibodies that person is basically then producing will then be, along with many other people, spread out and put into this therapy to replace what, again, many of us on this call and many of us in our community do not and will not, you know, be able to produce on our own in any meaningful way. So just like Amy has said, there's a lot of these things that are complicated, and that's one where you have to parse it out a little bit. So forgive me for crashing the party, but when it comes to maybe the silver lining or the other piece of it, I just wanted to, couldn't help myself. I'm in good company here, and how could I not jump in when such fun topics are being discussed? So, Ashley, I hereby shut my mouth once again.
We always love hearing from you, John, so it's never a problem. Thank you, Amy and Julie, so much for being here today, for answering all of these questions. Thank you to our participants for sending in your wonderful questions. We did get quite a few, and unfortunately, we aren't always able to get through all of them, but please do continue to send in your questions. If you send us your name and email address, we will try to get back to you with an answer to your question. I know Amy and Julie have actually, they have let us know that they are willing to continue to help with answering questions, so thank you so much for that. At this time, I would now like to pass it over to Sean McCabe from Takeda for a quick word from our sponsor.
Thank you, as always, Ashley. Amy and Julie, what an amazing presentation. Thank you. Very apropos, obviously, given the subject matter. And a sincere thank you yet again. I think the 26th opportunity here to partner with the IDF since spring on these incredible forums. And as mentioned, even by some of the industry peers prior to, thank you to the IDF for standing up in the moment, adapting and innovating to stay connected with the community. Amy, I couldn't agree more. John is a powerhouse. The staff is a powerhouse, and their commitment to the community is above all that we've seen, you know, within Takeda. And we're proud to offer therapies and support a lot of different disease areas in Takeda. Just a few words about Takeda. We're not here to talk product. We're not here to talk the manufacturer, but we are of Baxter lineage, in case you don't recognize the name. After a series of different company acquisitions, from Baxter to Baxalta to Shire to Takeda, we now find ourselves working for an organization with an incredible commitment to patients, with over 230 years of history in doing so. So found a great home, and through all those changes, our commitment to serving this community has not changed. And most importantly, the responsibility that comes with manufacturing these critical therapies. We're proud to offer a broad range of therapies, but at the same time, never forget ultimately who on the other end of that vein is in terms of the patient communities that we serve. So honored to be a part of this. Our commitment remains, and looking forward to the breakout, where I'll be joined by Dana Flathammer, who leads our community support team. I think she's batting 100% on 26 of these forums. So Dana, a huge shout out, obviously, to the commitment. And in addition, Brandon Monk. So I have the honor and privilege of leading our immune deficiency franchise, and Brandon is the head of our plasma-derived therapies business unit. And he'll also be joining to make sure that we stay connected and listen. And so my final parting comment, I think, to the spirit of everything discussed, listen, at this time, never has the news in the broader society heard as much about plasma, heard as much about antibodies, and this is a really critical moment. We recognize the complexity and the confusion, but at the same time, let's harness this, this incredible moment to ensure that people are aware of not only these critical therapies, but ultimately what they serve in terms of sustaining life and well-being. So my thanks for everyone. Awesome participation as always, and awesome questions coming in. Look forward to the engagement hereafter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. Always great hearing from you, and thank you to the, for always being here and those wonderful remarks. At this time, we're going to actually spice it up a little bit for those who might have not been in our other forums. I am going to hand it over to our Vice President of Communications, Tammy Black, who is going to speak about the Plasma Hero program. Tammy, all yours.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Great. Thank you for the thumbs up for the handful of you. Sean basically said exactly what my introduction was going to be. We've known at IDF for a very long time that we wanted to do more to raise awareness about plasma to the broader community, even beyond our own. And what the last 6 months has shown us was that we couldn't wait. We had to start something immediately. So we've launched a new website called Plasma Hero. And essentially it has 5 key goals. And those goals are to raise awareness, to celebrate donorship, which Julie and Amy talked so eloquently about. And we want to be able to do that across all kinds of programs. We want to be able to educate the community. We want to broaden our own audience beyond those with PI so that people can share information about donating plasma. And we want to be able to elevate the conversation as well and really take the opportunity that people are aware of plasma now more than ever. And so we want to be able to share that information. Great. So the website essentially has several components. One of them are a place for us to really share hero stories. So those heroes that are highlighted are, thank you for sharing the website there. Those heroes that are highlighted are people that are donating plasma. We have a convalescent plasma donor there. We have a source plasma donor there. And we also have PI patients and other people with chronic rare conditions who rely on plasma therapies who elevate, talk, and encourage their own friends and families and neighbors to donate plasma because they're heroes too. There's an interactive map on the website where you can find plasma centers if you need them. We have a knowledge base so that people can understand what the process is like and understand what happens to plasma from donation to treatment. And the kind of last step in the process are going to be some very concrete calls to action. We're going to treat donating plasma very much the way you treat a fundraising campaign. So all across social media this fall, you're going to start seeing calls for people to, we have a place on the website for people to report when they've donated plasma so that they can then get a badge to share on social media. We're going to give people tools so that they can get people in their churches and their clubs and their neighborhood groups and their workplaces to donate plasma together. So that's the we really wanted to do something that was a concrete, tangible. How can we help support efforts of PPTA and other groups like them that do so much to raise awareness about plasma? So I wanted to share. The website is plasmahero.org. Please check us out. We have Facebook and Instagram pages, and both of them are at Be a Plasma Hero. So follow us. And our email address is hello@plasmahero.org. I didn't want to take up any more time than that, but definitely reach out to us if you want more information. Visit our website and follow us on social media. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And Ashley asked me to talk about online research. I'm so sorry, Ashley. So when you visit our website at primaryimmune.org, we have several online resources available. So many of you probably know about Ask IDF, but if you don't, when you go into your My Account, there's a question box right at the bottom. You can ask a question and we can get to you as quickly as you need to. We have resources that are downloadable PDFs. So our patient and family handbook is the most common, but there are so many other resources available to you. We have videos, we have podcasts, we have blogs that at this point with so much news with COVID are coming out several times a week. If you don't already subscribe to our e-news, please do so. We also have text alerts now that we're sending out. So if you have a chance, go to your My Account in IDF and make sure that we have your proper email address, that we have your mobile number, and that you're subscribed to the emails that you want to get. And so there's a ton of resources available online. So, and there's also a coronavirus page that will kind of smack you in the face when you visit the front of our website right now. So it's easy to find. And we keep that up to date with news as we have it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Appreciate that. At this time, thank you again to our sponsors. We are excited because we are now going to go into our virtual exhibit hall. Thank you everyone so much for being here. I would now like to pass it over to John to go ahead and give us some closing remarks.
Sure, thank you, Ashley, and thank you to everyone who has stuck with us. Just a pro tip, again, there's always a few people who drop off for dinner or for other things, so if you stick along to the very end, your odds of winning one of the swag bags goes up that much more. So this was a new kind of forum for us, so thank you for bearing witness to it and asking such great questions along the way. One thing I did just kind of want to mention, PPTA mentioned their website that they use for a lot of plasma-related issues, including finding a center, donatingplasma.org. IDF, as Tammy had mentioned, has created plasmahero.org, and there are other websites and other efforts out there. These are not in competition with one another, just so you know. Bookmark all of them, check them all out. Refer your friends. The Immunoglobulin National Society has their own campaign, but they're all aiming in the same direction. But frankly, we deal with slightly different audiences or a slightly different way of approaching what it is. But the real interesting wonderful part to me is everyone is going in the exact same direction. The world needs more plasma, and know that this is really just the tip of the spear in terms of the efforts that are needed in order for us to get to a slightly more comfortable place, because to some degree there was a dip in people who were donating, and we have yet to, I think, really make up that gap that now exists. So it's on all of us. PPTA and some of the other organizations really have been providing great resources along the way, but those of us in our community, we have a certain way of doing things. If you're reaching out to your friends and neighbors, you may want some, slightly different tools. And so that's why IDF is adding its own spin with Plasma Hero. But learn from all of the different campaigns and all the different resources that are out there. Go make your own, do whatever you like, because the real important piece is that we raise the awareness, and just know that because of, self-interest too, I'm on immunoglobulin as well, all of us at IDF have this as our yellow alert. Basically, we have for a couple of months, and we will going into red alert season as it may happen in the future. So just know that this is one of the top priorities out there for our community. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And just make sure that you are aware of all of the different resources that are helping us to make up any gaps that exist, and also to just plain make plasma and immunoglobulin available more readily globally. But that, of course, is another story and another meeting for another time. So for now, let's leave it there. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at another one of our forums or one of our other upcoming events. Take care, stay healthy, wear a mask. Bye all.